Good morning. This is the September meeting of the Long Island Railroad Committee. We welcome everybody back. We're going to start with public comments. Are there any public comments?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there are 4 public speakers signed up. Omar Vera, followed by Jason Pinheiro, followed by Orrin Getz, and finally Murray Bowden. I'd like to respectfully request the speakers that they adhere to the 2-minute time limit and direct their comments to matters on the agenda for this morning. Thank you.
Greetings, MTA Long Island Railroad Committee. I'm back after an 8-month hiatus. I was last here in January, but all right. First of all, everyone enjoyed summer break? All right. Second, down to the business. I really believe that there should be better accountability regarding like how to better maintain plans for the. It was regarding the summer service change on the Penn Station on Amtrak, which the governor dubbed Summer of Hell. I believe it should have worked like not just AM rush on the cross honoring at Atlantic Terminal, also known as Flatbush Avenue, but it should have also been PM rush as well. Because like I said, the summer, like, it could have been worse. It wasn't as bad, like the service pattern wasn't as bad as we thought it would have been, but we just need to have more preparation, be better prepared for the next round. And because I know it's going to happen again next year. Second, I think it's time to have the Long Island City Station as fully as a full-time terminal, just to better serve those communities, instead of having to go all the way to Penn Station or to Brooklyn. And of course, I reiterate what I said last year regarding the regarding signs heading to Penn Station within New York City. It should say to Manhattan, not to New York. As you know, New York City's 5 boroughs, not 1. And last but not least, thanks for having me here. And did you have a happy break, Veronica? Happy summer? Yeah. All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jason Pinheiro.
Good beloved morning. Good morning, Mitch. Good morning, Susan. Good morning, Veronica. Good morning, everybody. I'm back after a month of vacation. A couple of things. One, I'm very happy that you guys are going to report on East Side Access. That's a very good thing. Second, Pat, if you listen to me, we want Wi-Fi at platform level at Atlanta Terminal, Brooklyn, and known as Flatbush Avenue. And if it's possible, we know that there's 2 AirTrain ticket machines in Penn Station. Why don't we exchange one of the machines from Atlanta Terminal, put in Penn Station, and put the one that serves AirTrain tickets, move it to Atlanta Terminal? Because it's not fair that a person that lives in Brooklyn that wants to buy a combined AirTrain Long Island Railroad ticket has to take the 2 or the 3 train to Penn Station and then get that ticket. It's not fair. Another thing is, I would like to get an update regarding Freedom Ticket because it's way overdue. We want update, please. And we want updates regarding the productions on the M9. So that's all I have for this month. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz, and I did pass out to the chairman and president of the Long Island Railroad a copy of a news article. It says repairs are far from finished at Penn Station, and this is an important thing to consider. You did get through this summer okay, and so did the people coming in from New Jersey on the other side. But there are ongoing repairs, and we have to be prepared that Amtrak is going to have to do something more radical in the future. So please look into that and see what has to be done so that people can make plans for in the future. Also, I'm a person who has to transfer to another train on another track to get into Penn Station. And I think it's kind of a bad idea that the Long Island Railroad wants to put a scoot service in from downtown Brooklyn to Jamaica and have the people change trains and change tracks, change platforms. There's also the same situation at Penn Station in Newark, and it's an undesirable thing. There, New Jersey Transit, at least off-peak, is running through trains because they have the time slots at that time. I think you should reconsider that project and possibly change your ideas about scoot service to Brooklyn. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last speaker is Murray Bowden.
My name is Murray Bowden, and I live in Hartsdale, New York. Some of you were here for... I'll wait, Veronica, because I was going to address you. I was waiting for your attention. Have you read the book yet? Because you should. Because it'll tell you why I want him fired, and I want him fired. Pat does not know that this is 2017 and not 2007. And Mitch and I know, he knows that this is the wrong time. They're doing traffic lights on a crossing where you have the flashing red lights and the other. And they can't understand. People don't pay attention anymore. Hey, Neil, you're next, so finish it. Read the book. This is not 2007. This is 2017. Don't charge my time because he's busy and I got to talk to him. You can only do one thing at a time, Neil. You raised the issue about what's going on and the money that's being spent up in York County up there at the last meeting. I listened very carefully. What's going on is they're doing it the old-fashioned way, both Metro North and here. And the real issue is positive train control. Positive train control was invented before 2007. And what Thomas Friedman tells you is why it's not available today. I tried to explain to you over and over again that positive train control was a waste of time, a waste of money, and I couldn't do it. It's right there. The iPhone changed the way things are done. It all comes off. The phone now, not off the computer. IBM doesn't make computers. They sell internet service. They give you your program on the cloud, not on a computer anymore. So all the money that you're spending on positive train control is wasted. And Andrew Saul was right. The money that contract, the one bid, everybody's doing design bid. Because this committee and the Metro North Committee doesn't understand that, you're not getting the right bids. And Chuck was right. He got on 11:30 last night and he got all kinds of information that's available. I do it too. They don't do it. And that's why you got to fire Pat. And Pat knows I was going to say this, and Mitch knows I was going to say I was going to fire him too. So you got 4 people to fire. You got Susan to fire, you got Pat to fire, you got Kathy to fire. Look, this is 2017, not 2007. Educate yourself. Figure out what's going on. This is a different world. What happened in transit was correct. They went to fast track and they changed the culture of the institution.
Could you wrap up your comments, please?
You know, are you listening? I'm going to fire you too, because when somebody stands up here and fires the president of the railroad, that's the time you get a little extra time. You don't get it. This is a different world. There's a time when you say, this is important. Pay attention. That's why I stopped when they were not paying attention, because I want them to hear what I have to say. If you don't get it, fire you too.
Thank you. Is that the end of public comments? Okay. Thank you all for our comments. Approval of the minutes of the July 24th meeting. Are there any changes or to the minutes? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Anyone second? All in favor? Okay. Pat, any changes to the work plan?
No changes to the work
No changes to the work plan, and then why don't we go then into your president's report?
Thank you and good morning. I wanted to start out talking a little bit about the Penn Station repair work that was done this summer. Our plan for that, how our plan worked out, and going forward, what are the lessons learned a little bit from Penn Station. So let me remind you, when we met in July, we were 2 weeks in to the repair work at Penn Station. And at that time, I indicated to you that we were seeing a shift of people away from Penn and to Hunters Point Avenue and Atlantic Terminal. So it was early in the program. I'd like to give you an end of the program sort of update on that, on where we stand. And what we did see is a 13% decrease in the AM ridership into Penn Station. We saw an 8% decrease in the PM ridership at Penn Station. Similarly, we saw a 45% increase in Atlantic Terminal AM ridership and a 25% increase in Atlantic Terminal PM ridership. At Hunters Point Avenue, we saw a 77% gain in AM ridership and a 69% increase in PM ridership. So the numbers that I ran through you then were pretty consistent throughout the summer. So we did see a change in ridership patterns for Penn Station and for the alternatives. Remember, we incentivize people to go to those terminals by reducing fares to those two locations. That has ended with September coming around. And obviously, we ran more trains into those terminals and less trains into Penn. We ran less trains into Penn because the work that Amtrak was doing decreased the capacity of Penn Station. We lost 3 station tracks for the duration of the summer. In addition to that, they were doing significant work in A interlocking. A interlocking is just west of the platforms at Penn. It is the main area where trains either coming through the Hudson River Tunnel or trains coming out of our West Side Yard are sorted as they try to go east and into the platform tracks in Penn Station. The work in A interlocking was extremely extensive throughout the time period. And has been mentioned, Amtrak is not done working at Penn Station. They continue to work. They actually started prior to the July 8th date that initiated the service reductions, but they had been working for months on improvements. They will continue into 18 with further improvements to Penn Station. So we expect to see impacts as we go along. The severity of this summer is not expected to be repeated at that same level, but there are still details to be worked out with them. We are in constant meetings and communications with them. I do want to thank our customers for the way they embraced the changes that were made. I want to thank our employees. I want to thank all our partners in this because there were a lot of things that were done. One, our employees really went above and beyond in terms of their dedication to making sure this happened and happened the right way. The planning that went into this, remember, this was not something that was planned 6 months in advance. It was a very short time period advance. It was very intense planning that went on. There were a whole bunch of folks who put in a tremendous amount of time and effort, and I want to thank all of them because, in my point of view, this was a successful endeavor in terms of accomplishing the work that was accomplished and at the same time serving our ridership as best we could. And our partners, I'll start with Amtrak because they completed the work they said they were going to complete on schedule. Metro North, who met before us, they accommodated Amtrak trains going into Grand Central. They actually assisted us when we were exploring the ferry operation and what we would need to do to make that happen. Transit, we did a tremendous amount of cross-honoring. Transit had people down at all the cross-honoring locations and were working with us to make it a success. So the participation of everybody, even the DOT got involved. As you know, they actually reduced some LIE work to not impact or impede traffic on the LIE throughout the summer period. So there were a lot of people that had a part in making this happen. I mentioned the ferries, but let me talk about alternative service. As you know, our alternative service consisted of ferries out of Long Island City, ferries out of Glen Cove, buses out of a number of locations on Long Island. We did that in the to make sure we had an overabundance of opportunities for people. We weren't sure what everybody's reaction was going to be, and we wanted to make sure that we provided alternatives to them. We also quickly adapted. Things that weren't being utilized, we reduced. We reduced the number of buses. We reduced the ferries out of Long Island City because they weren't being used by our passengers. But that was an adjustment we made on the fly in the course of the summer to keep our expenses under control. In the area of expenses, in July, you were shown the July plan that included estimates of what this work would be. We don't have all the final numbers in yet, but I can tell you from a Long Island Railroad perspective, our expenses for the efforts we did, the buses, the ferries, the revenue coming in, the amount of extra staffing that we put on board, it looks like we're going to be below the numbers that were presented in the July plan. Again, they're not final yet, but that's where we look at this point in time. In terms of lessons learned, you know, we put a lot of effort into this. We opened up every day, AM and PM peak. Our war room or our operations coordination room for the AM and PM rushes every day. We had people stationed out throughout the railroad, particularly at key transfer points to assist passengers. We put additional people in the customer service center to field calls and answer questions. The use of social media to communicate with people was unprecedented. We had additional plans in place with New Jersey Transit and Amtrak for quick rescue of any problems we had. So we had a lot of plans in work. We certainly will take lessons learned from them going forward on how we can do that to help better improve everyday operation on the service. I do want to say that our on-time performance for those 2 months were the two highest of the year. And one final thing, and I'll transition here out of the summer work, but I do want to mention our ridership was down. We lost 1.6% of our ridership in August and 2.2% in July. And when I say we lost, as compared to last July and August numbers. So in terms of transitioning to ridership here, in terms of my comments, what I want to say is that I think I had told you in July that 3 out of the 4 prior months, our ridership had been down over the prior year, 2016. So this now makes 5 out of 6 months where our ridership is down over 2016. And obviously, most of the months were very close. July and August were significant drops. That said, year to date, we are still up 0.2% over the prior year. It is not the ridership growth we've been seeing, but that's where we stand at this point in time, 0.2% year to date over last year. One of the thoughts that came to my mind when I looked at the ridership was you know, it wasn't the best weather summer, so I was curious what our ridership was out east to the beaches, because in the summertime, that is usually a very significant number. I checked with some of the East End trade associations and looked at our ridership on the Cannonball and that type of stuff. And everything indicated to me that actual business was up, hiring was up, ridership on the Cannonball was up in 17 versus 16. So I can't blame the weather this time. It was something that that happened, again, obviously in my mind, due to the summer work in Penn Station, and we did a good job of scaring people away from the difficulties that were out there. With that, I'm going to shift over to just a quick view of some of the work that we went on this summer at our Hicksville station. If I could get the slides up. Okay, Hicksville Station, just for your information, is the third largest ridership location on the entire Long Island Railroad, Treleone, Penn Station, and Jamaica. So it is a significant ridership location. It consists of 3 tracks and 2 platforms up on an elevated structure. Trying to schedule this work and maintain passenger operations is always quite a challenge. We started one platform last spring once the winter weather went by, and we're doing shut a little portion, reopen it, shut a little portion, reopen it. It's very painful. What we did this summer was we actually shut down one of the platforms from Memorial Day roughly to Labor Day. And what you see there in that picture is the contractor that was doing this work completely rebuilt one platform in a 3-month time period. The other platform will continue on for months into the fall because it is a critical. We couldn't do the same thing when the other platform and maintain service. But it was a great accomplishment. Our DPM folks were out there monitoring this. Our transportation folks did what they had to do to keep operations running smoothly. The contractor did what they had to do to demolish the existing platform and to put up a new platform in 3 short months. So it shows you what we're trying to do to move this project forward, and we expect the whole project to conclude next spring of next year. So Hicksville is a project that's going well, and this summer was a very important piece of accomplishing this project very quickly. And I'll take questions.
Comments and questions for Pat. Randy?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear that the leasing of those cars, the 8 cars, marked cars from MTA Maryland, was a positive, and you're going to continue with next year?
Yes, the agreement that we entered into with Maryland was a 3-year agreement. So yes, we do have the ability to rent those cars again next year and beyond.
Anyone else? I just wanted to thank Pat, his entire team, all of our employees, and our customers for their patience and forbearance this summer. Regardless of the description you use, the time that went into putting it together and the implementation, I think, was a tremendous opportunity for the railroad and its customers, for some people to learn where Atlantic Terminal was and is. And I'd be very interested to see how those numbers relate to September and October, whether our customers who have now found Atlantic Terminal continue to go there, notwithstanding the fact that they could go back to Penn, whether their trip is easier, whatever it is. Were they only doing it because of the fare discount, or were they doing it because it now makes their trip easier in some fashion? So I'd be very interested in those numbers going forward.
We are tracking those numbers now. Obviously, we don't have September's numbers yet,
right,
because it continues. But the early tabs do indicate that higher ridership is continuing into both of those locations. So we'll see how significant
Right.
it is. But again, all the trains, save 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Train, are back at Penn.
Right. But if someone wanted to get to Atlantic, they could figure out how to get there on some train. There is an opportunity for them to get there. They may have to change their schedule to accommodate it now, but they could do that. And I think people will do that if they find that Atlantic Terminal is a better option for them than they might have had before. We'll find that out. I want to thank, obviously, the bus and ferry systems were there to provide an option for those people who wanted them. Some of them worked better than others, and I think we learned a little about Long Islanders and their willingness to try something new or not in these situations, which is an interesting context. But the other thing I think we need to ensure is that the lessons learned from the experience, we are going to have to continue those that make sense, and they are now going to have to become the norm, not the exception. Obviously, some of them will relate to that and others won't, but we're going to have to figure out which ones of those are now important to continue on a daily and sustainable basis and how we're going to pay for them, because that's going to affect, obviously, the 2018 budget. But I think it's essential that those that were beneficial, including many of the communications issues and many of the other options, continue as a recurring basis going forward. Okay, with that, we'll go to safety.
Good morning. We're reporting on our safety performance through the end of July, and that report can be found on page 93 of your book. Our customer reportable rate continues to decline. We're down 11% roughly over last year's same period, and our employee injury rate is roughly the same, slightly up from last year. The two activities that appear to generate the most injury reports from our employees are walking and material handling, and the largest type of injury being reported are soft tissue injuries, so sprains, strains. So September 19th, we had our quarterly safety focus meeting with all of our employees. Again, an opportunity for us to take a step back and focus on what we're seeing and how the employees are experiencing safety at the railroad. So slip, trips, and falls and strategies for preventing slip, trips, and falls was a big focus of that focus day. In addition, over the course of these 4 weeks, we are also supporting our safety focus day with safety, health, and wellness events. So we have 7 events that are taking place at various Long Island Railroad locations on various tours, also trying to connect our employees not just with safety, but with wellness strategies for supporting how they experience our environment. We have a very physically demanding environment, and it's important that our employees are prepared to work in and perform their activities in that environment. In addition, just to highlight, we reached over 61,000 participants through our partnership with the MTA Police through our TRACS outreach and community education program. And similar to our colleagues at Metro North, we are also supporting Operation Lifesaver rail safety activities at various stations and grade crossings through the course of this week. In addition to being supported by our MTA Police, we also have FRA and PTSB representatives partnering up with us to get the message out about safety on the rails. And with that, we do have a safety committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday where we'll talk more about our various activities, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Neil?
Thank you, sir. Lori, I appreciate in your comments about the employee lost time. You were very clear about the causes. This morning, my colleague, Mr. Merdler, asked your colleague from Metro North, Justin, a similar set of questions, and I don't think we had as clear of a answer as to the why of the injuries. We discussed what we're going to do about it, a little less about the why. I would love it at the safety committee meeting on Wednesday if you and your colleague from Metro North put your heads together about the commonalities you've seen on the rising employee situation we have at Metro North, and maybe the conditions you're seeing, whether they're different or related in Long Island Railroad. The purpose of those joint meetings, and usually why we have the joint meetings for this committee, is so we can find those commonalities, and I'm sure there's a way we can benefit by the two heads putting together. Thank you.
Chuck?
I note that a fair number of riders on the Long Island Railroad and on Metro-North bring on board food, which they eat while traveling. What do you do, or do you have any significant number of incidents involving that stuff being dumped on the tracks, on the platforms? What are you doing about cleaning that up to the extent you have the problem? Because it doesn't seem as apparent as it is in the subways, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on.
Chuck, I'll deal with that a little bit. Our passengers, their disposal method seems to be to leave it on board the train. So I shouldn't say it that way. There are plenty of people who
I can vouch for that, Chuck. I can assure you. I can vouch for that.
Maybe better.
There are many people who do take it off the train and deposit it on our platforms where we have receptacles. And the debris left on the train, at the end of the lines where we can, we try to clean it up by having people go through the trains and, at least pick up the big stuff. There are, if somebody leaves a coffee cup half full and it spills over and we wind up with a wet floor, that's certainly a safety challenge, and we need to try and deal with those types of things. But we don't have as much of a subway environment as they do, so if theirs is a little more, I think, people on the platforms don't go to a receptacle and throw the stuff in the track area, as opposed to being on board the train and flying.
Do you have receptacles in the cars?
No. And I've been involved once in my career where we tried to do that, and for concern of the police department, we were discouraged from doing so, and it was not here, it was elsewhere, in terms of it being someplace where somebody could hide an explosive device or what have you. So there's pros and cons.
Ira?
On the safety report, I just want to note one thing. The grade crossing incidents, I see it pretty much consistent. In fact, this rolling 12-month period is higher than the other two compared. I just, it seems that all the efforts we're making, I mean, we may be getting through to some people, but we're not reducing our incidents. I don't know if that's considered something that we should be looking to do, or why that hasn't taken place, even with all these education efforts. I mean, maybe there's just maybe we're at a certain point where we're going to have like between, I don't know, 7 to 12 incidents per year, no matter what we do. I just wonder what sort of thinking on that.
So there's certainly over time where things will plateau, and you have to be creative and try to find other ways of engaging with the community in order to see if there's the awareness and the interaction at grade crossing. So we're certainly scanning through the industry and working with the MTA police and through MTA headquarters. We have a number of significant efforts that are looking at globally grade crossings, but also specifically at certain grade crossings to see if there's enhancements that can be made, because obviously there's unique characteristics and unique challenges at each of our 290 plus grade crossings. So there's a number of activities that we're engaged in to try to improve in that effort. Because we're not, we're trying to break through that plateau and continue to drive those events down.
Okay, thank you. Then I look forward to improvement.
I guess there are, I would just add 3 things. Obviously, number one, where we can remove grade crossings like we're doing on third track, we assume that will help in that area. We hope so. Number 2, we try very hard, and Pat and I have had this discussion, especially on the East End, not to increase the number of grade crossings, because while we understand the issues involved in moving back and forth, it does lead to significant safety issues in that regard, and that I don't think we want to be in a position where those are going to happen. And number 3, obviously at the safety committee meeting, we are looking at the issue of lights, warnings, other things. Having been here, however, for many years, I'm starting to get the conclusion that's not going to help. I mean, you could put a wall there, and as the one that happened last week, somebody goes around the wall. And so it's not a question of them not, for many people, knowing that there's a grade crossing there, knowing that it's dangerous, knowing that the train is coming, for whatever reason, they don't care. And I'm starting to come to that conclusion. Now, that may be different with pedestrians, obviously, especially school children, and I know the railroad, both railroads have a major program with regard to school children, and that's essential, where schools border the grade crossings. But from a vehicular standpoint, as I said, I'm starting to come to the conclusion, for some people it doesn't matter, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Okay, capital construction.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. We're going to give you an update on the East Side Access Project, and I'm continuing to evaluate and think about how do we effectively deliver this project. But there's one thing that I just want to highlight that will be in Mr. Goodrich's presentation, which is we've not talked about a lot, is the degree to which this project includes a lot of regionally significant railroad infrastructure that I would put in the category of state of good repair. Includes a lot of investments, millions and millions of dollars of investments of things that are necessary to maintain the regional railroad system with all the different operators we have and make sure that we don't fall below state of good repair standards, so that we can accommodate the level of traffic. So with that, Bill, would you take it away?
Thank you, General. Good morning. I'll be discussing the overall progress on the East Side Access project, which will provide a faster, more direct route to the east side of Manhattan for roughly half of Long Island Railroad's customers, speeding up their commutes by 30 to 40 minutes per day. Overall, the construction is now about 72% complete. That's as of our September 1st report. The concourse contract, which includes the structure and all finishes, is 41% complete. This is a recent photo of the main north-south passenger concourse viewed from the vicinity of 44th Street near the future Biltmore Room connection. Next slide. Schindler Corporation is making good progress on the escalator truss installations that you see here. There are a total of 11 escalators installed out of 22 in this contract. You can see here 5 escalators installed in the wellway between the terminal and the concourse in the vicinity of 45th Street. In the terminal itself, as you know, the caverns are completely excavated, and we are in the process of installing the precast concrete structure, which is now just over 30% complete. This is a view at the mezzanine level with the upper track slab precast above. After several months of submittals, planning, fabrication, and preparation, I am very pleased to report that we have started the installation of the permanent low vibration track in the 63rd Street tunnels. We have a total of 13.5 miles of track to install under this contract. Shown here is the first 900 feet installed with some of the concrete placed. This represents a major milestone for the project to begin the installation of track in the tunnels for the Long Island Railroad service to GCT. This photo taken in the East Cavern looking north shows the full 54-foot span of the precast concrete beams being installed for both the upper track and mezzanine levels. The lower track, shown on the right side, is supported directly on the base slab of the cavern. I would now like to move on to the progress and activities in the Herald Interlocking in Queens. As you know, Herald Interlocking is a very challenging environment in which to work for a variety of reasons. It is considered to be the busiest passenger interlocking in North America, with over 780 train movements per day, and it's utilized by 4 operating railroads. Coordination and careful planning is of utmost importance. Earlier this month, East Side Access and Long Island Railroad forces began the crucial task of performing pre-cutover testing of the final 5 central instrument locations, or CILs, In total, 10 new CILs will control signals, switches, and train movements within Harold Interlocking for the railroads. Over 11 weekends between this month and March 2018, pre-cutover testing of the remaining CILs will be performed leading up to that cutover in May, which will involve 2 weekends when the new CILs will be put into service. This cutover in May 2018 is critical to the overall program schedule. The new Long Island Railroad signaler system controlled by these CILs utilizes modern microprocessor technology, which is faster, has more redundancies, and is more reliable than the older relay-based signal system. Following the May 2018 cutover, work to relocate, remove, and replace tracks and switches at the eastern end of the interlocking will get underway during the summer. This will allow for the on-time start of work at the end of the year on the final remaining tunnel approach structure, which will bring Tunnel BC to the surface. As work progresses throughout the interlocking, we are also using this opportunity to upgrade, modernize, and bring to a state of good repair the signals, tracks, switches, and power system in the interlocking. The benefits to the riding public of these investments and improvements are seen as they are completed and cut over into the existing infrastructure of Harold. While there is still much work to be done and the team is focused on achieving revenue service, the CIL cutover in May 2018 will be the culmination of many years and over $1 billion of work by ESA, Long Island, and Amtrak to reconfigure the interlocking and allow for the new service to Grand Central Terminal. This concludes my report, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Questions? Call?
Yeah. You had mentioned in the beginning that you're using low vibration tracks. How is that achieved? Is that in the bedding underneath them, or is it the actual track roll?
It's actually the part of the bedding underneath. It's part of the support system. We use what's called a resilient tie block system that has a resilient pad built into the tie block assembly. So this is immediately below the track.
And the track sets right in it.
Yeah, the track is attached to the top of it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Ira?
How's our relationship with Amtrak going with this project?
Ira, if I may, I'll take that one. I think, as you know, Bill alluded to the importance of the CIL cutover as this important stage of the signaling modernization program. When Amtrak announced that they had to do their major asset replacement this summer, we lost significant outages, weekend outages that were long planned for this ESA significant work. That triggered us to initiate what we call the Master Regional Schedule program. And as Pat said, it's something that I think we've all, those of us in the business have wanted to see for a long time, which is for all of the different operators, all the different agencies that need outages for any reason. That includes Long Island, Amtrak, our program, Moynihan Station, some private developers who are doing work in Hudson Yards and so on, to have a single forum and a single schedule to eliminate conflicts, and where we can reconcile conflicts to take advantage of chances to piggyback work. If there's going to be an outage and somebody else needs to get work done that's dependent on a similar outage, let's try to coordinate it. So we initiated that. We have initiated weekly meetings. There's been an executive level series of meetings, and I think that, pardon the pun, we're on track to have this process become functional. Have we resolved? Well, first of all, we're taking it in. First, there's a 3-month increment schedule, which is obviously the most germane for all of us who are trying to catch up from the summer and maintain schedule. There's a 2018 schedule for all of 2018, and then, frankly, there's a 10-year look ahead that is trying to look forward to major issues that are going to arise, and so that we can start to plan. Obviously, the focus has been on the 3-month and the 1-year schedule, and right now I would say that while we have not resolved all the conflicts, we have a highly functional process where everybody is sitting at the table and collaborating. We've resolved some major conflicts with Pat's and his team's leadership. We were able to accommodate one major outage for a developer piece of work in the yards. And right now, we're on the verge of nailing down replacement outages for those we lost this summer on the CIL cutover with Amtrak. So we need Amtrak, who's continuing work. It's no secret they have more work to do to continue to be collaborative in this effort. They ultimately own some of the infrastructure, but so far it has been very collaborative. So I'd say we're in decent shape, but it's something that we all will continue to report to you on.
Go ahead, Ira.
Yeah, on the CILs, those things will control all the trains through the interlockings, right? It's Amtrak and even
when you talk to
movements-
CIL, it's basically controlling the track and signals.
Right.
The trains just follow the signals.
Right. No, but does that right? So that would have to does also include Amtrak's yard movements and New Jersey Transit yard movements as well. So when we do this, are they part of the? Do they pay for some of this work? Or do they contribute to us, or is that worked out in some other way? I'm just curious, because and not just the CILs, but any of the work we do that's changing Harold interlocking that they use.
Well, there's definitely some significant benefits to them that are coming from our program. That's part of what I think we're trying to convey to you. But Bill, why don't you give a little more detail?
Yeah, that work and other similar work is funded outside of the East Side Access budget and under regional improvements. So
And I think there were some federal funds in that also, if I recall.
Yeah, they were.
We got a federal grant
FRA
for
funds.
FRA funds for some of that. So recognizing the regional benefit to everybody in that context.
Yeah.
Right.
But regarding the day-to-day stuff, that's all under the pre-agreement in terms of who pays for what and how much, whether it's Amtrak, Metro North, us and Amtrak.
Right. I was talking about the capital investment. I know there's an operating agreement which also includes.
You were referring in your report to the escalators being installed at Grand Central. Schindler uses a proprietary chip on its elevators. Does it have a similar chip on the escalators? Because that proprietary chip limits who can maintain and repair those Schindler-based elevators and serves to make the costs greater and the delay in maintenance even longer. Query, do they have any similar proprietary chips on those escalators? And if so, what are we going to do about that?
I'm not sure about the whether or not they have a similar proprietary chip, but I will say that this procurement, when it was done, was a cradle-to-grave procurement. This was a project-wide procurement for escalators and elevators. The final phase, which is an option for Long Island Railroad, is to exercise that option for Schindler to operate and maintain the escalators over their service life.
What I would like to ask you to do is to check if they have a proprietary chip there, and if so, how are you going to deal with maintenance going forward? Because what you're doing is giving them effective monopoly in that area and also causing a problem on maintenance and replacement. I'd like you to check that and let us know.
We'll get back to you. It's a good question. Thank you.
Gentlemen, so it sounds like you've made some good communication progress with Amtrak. I'm glad to hear, and it sounds like this longer-term scheduling tool will be very effective. One thing I'd like to ask you to do, since you're coming sort of with fresh eyes here, is now take a step back and understanding where these delays have taken place. What's happened to the overall schedule? I mean, we've heard 2022. We heard there was some cushion in there. My guess is a lot of that has been eaten up. I think it'd be valuable for us as a board to now sort of set the deck with an understanding as to where the current team believes delivery is going to be there, what are the key milestones that we should be following, and then make it if it's okay with the chairman, a regular reporting to this committee as to are we still tracking that schedule and if there's any changes to it, because this has been something that's been going on and fairly opaque to the public.
Absolutely, and candor, I'm still in the process of being able to give you a thorough answer on that. This is, as you all know from working on this a lot longer than I have, an extremely complicated project with multiple contracts and construction as well as legal and other complexities. But I'm anticipating giving you a thorough report in the next month or so.
Next month or so?
That will address, I hope, address what you're raising.
Thank you. Thank you. But I think one of the things from what that I got out of today's is not only the progress of the project itself, but the fact that there are ancillary benefits that come into play as soon as they are ready. We're not waiting until 2022 to put the new systems in place. When those are ready, they go in place so that the riding public will get the benefit of the Harold interlocking changes for a variety of purposes in 2018, we hope, not 2022. And there are other things that have occurred, and will continue to occur while that end date is forthcoming.
Yeah, and because these changes, as you say, are hard for the public to see, we're going to keep reporting to you.
Okay.
So that at least you, in your role, are aware of what the benefits already are as we move towards a completion date.
Okay. And at some point, I would ask if you could go back and provide us with a list of what has already been done, already been implemented, or is already helping the Long Island Railroad in its service that has been either part of East Side Access or ancillary to East Side Access. I think that would be a very good report for everybody to see. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else on this? Chuck, go ahead.
This is a significant reach. Is there any possible opportunity during the course of the implementation of East Side Access to provide some means by which the proposed 4 stations in the Bronx could wend their way into Grand Central? I said it was a reach.
I refer back to a very learned man saying significant reach. But we'll look at it again. I think, in fairness,
I'd appreciate it if you could. I'll tell you why. That section of the Bronx has virtually no mass public transit, with the exception of buses, which struggle to do the good job that they tend to do. And it seems to me that we have an obligation to have that part of the city of New York get some form of transit, mass transit, as quickly as we can.
But we'll look at it and we'll report back.
I said it was a reach.
All right. Oh, all right. Go ahead.
This is kind
not
of
as much of a reach as that one, right?
Well, it's parallel, I'll say that
okay.
much.
Go
It's a
ahead.
Me Too Queens thing. I just don't want us to forget
Go
Southeastern Queens if we're going to start. Look, there was an experiment planned for actually a fare from Southeastern Queens. Actually, it didn't even involve Manhattan. It was to Brooklyn. And if we're going to start, this isn't necessarily you, Jano, but I think if we're going to look at providing service, to areas of New York City that don't have good mass transit service, Southeastern Queens is certainly one of them that already has Long Island Railroad service, maybe just not adequate. And I think that if we're going to look at the East Bronx, we probably should be looking at Southeastern Queens as well. And that I wish someone would look at that experiment we were going to try out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. MTA Police. Chief?
Good morning. I'm Chief Joe McGran from the MTA Police Department. Chief Monahan is out of town, so I'll be giving the police report this morning. System-wide, total major felonies are down year-to-date and for the month of August. Long Island Railroad specific experienced a reduction of major felonies of 50% for the month of August, and year-to-date the Long Island Railroad is down 11% in total felony crimes. However, despite the fact that grand larcenies are down both year-to-date and month-to-date, grand larcenies tend to be the driving force behind crime in the system.
Most of these grand larcenies are the result of unattended packages or sleeping passengers. We do announcements, thanks to our friends in the Long Island Railroad. They're made on the trains and they're made on the platforms to keep an eye on your packages and to remain alert with your private property. But it is a challenge that we continue to address. Also, during the past few weeks, we received a request from our brothers and sister officers down in Houston Metro Police Department because of the hurricane situation down in Texas. As a result, we were able to put together a supply aid package, and we sent down with 5 of our officers, consisting of diapers, toiletries, other essentials that were requested by our brother and sister officers down in Houston, and they were greatly appreciated. Any questions?
Hope you find your way to Puerto Rico, too.
Puerto Rico, Florida, other areas, I know.
Thank you, Chief, very much. Okay, information items, Pat?
Yeah, the information items, one is the reminder that the July plan was presented in July and it remains available for public comment on the website. There is also included in the book a mid-year financial forecast. There is a diversity committee meeting this afternoon, and I will be giving a report there as well as the other presidents. And then finally, our fall track work program is in the book as well.
Any questions on any of those items? Okay, if not, we'll go to procurements. Page 63. Dennis?
Good morning. There are 2 items in this month's procurement package which begin on in your book on page 63. These items are in the competitive section, and they are both requests to use the RFP method of procurement. There are no items in the non-competitive section, and there are no ratifications this month. The items in the competitive section are requests for MTA Board approval to adopt resolutions declaring that competitive bidding is impractical or inappropriate, and that it is therefore in the public interest to use the request for proposal RFP process pursuant to Section 1265A of the Public Authorities Law to award the following 2 contracts. The first request will be for the award of a contract to design and furnish an upgraded signal system for the Babylon to Patchogue segment of the Long Island Railroad Montauk branch. Work under this contract includes upgrading the existing 1940s era installed outmoded signal system from an automatic block system to new pre-wired signal enclosures required for an automatic speed control system. The current system controls the Babylon to Patchogue segment of the Montauk branch. Funding for this project is included in the Long Island Railroad portion of the MTA's 2015-2019 capital program budget. The second request will be for the award of a contract to design and furnish and deliver manufactured signal equipment for the Long Island Railroad's new Beaver interlocking and newly signalized Johnson Avenue yard associated with the Jamaica Capacity Improvements Project. The work under this contract includes retaining a third-party signal vendor to progress existing 30% design to 100% design and to furnish and deliver wired signal, instrument huts, battery huts, and signal cases, including the vital and non-vital software necessary for the functionality equipment being provided. Funding for this project is included in the 2010 to 2014 capital program budget, and these items are submitted for your consideration and vote.
Chuck?
At this morning's meeting at Metro North, it appeared that there are instances where a design-build contract, as you start down the process of formulating the specifications and the like, may more appropriately be turned into individual bid items, And my point is, it seems to me you ought to consider providing a hedge in the resolutions going forward to allow that kind of flexibility, should that appear, with appropriate notification to the board that you have concluded that this should be done in that fashion. I think you need to have that flexibility based on what I heard this morning at Metro North.
Chuck, just quickly, this is really a traditional, it's why we're using the RFP process. This is a traditional purchase of materials, this particular procurement. It will actually be installed by Long Island Railroad forces along our right-of-way. The signal designer traditionally does design the signal huts that Jano and Bill showed you as part of theirs, and they furnish them, we test them, and we actually connect them to the track structure out in the field. So it is design build for the individual circuits, but that's the traditional way we've always procured signal systems.
I think, Chuck, based on the conversation we had at Metro North, the extensive conversation we had at Metro North this morning, and I think Susan and I both agree that we're going to request two things, or well, at least two things. Number one, I think we'd both like to find out, has design build reduced the number of bidders, which is issue one, and there may be a good reason for that happening, but I think we'd like to know, has that happened? And number two, how does design build and the other way we did things through RFP, how do they connect to each other so that we provide as much flexibility as possible for our procurement people? Because we don't want the bidding process, in whichever way we do it, to slow down the project. These projects are essential. The Metro North project is essential. This project is essential. But we need to also provide protections in how we do it to accommodate what we need to do and as much flexibility as possible. So we're going to ask at Finance for that request to be made so that, and I'm not arguing this project, this procurement one way or the other, the more generic issue of how we do procurements in this context. Design build has become a much more used process, and we need to find out how that benefits us, and if there are hindrances, which we may have found one at Metro North this morning, how we can provide flexibility so as not to have to say, you know what, now we're going to start the project all over again, and we just lost 12 months, and we don't want to lose 12 months on anything, let alone a customer service initiative, very important to our friends at Metro North, or this type of situation where it's very important from a signal standpoint. So we will follow up on both of those. Susan, I don't know if you want to add something?
I just want to add that we also came to the conclusion that if in any kind of a purchase, be it an RFP or a design build, it becomes apparent that there's some bump in the road, a glitch. The costs are way, way higher than expected. The design isn't going the way it should go, whatever it is, that the board be made aware of that so that we're not surprised when we're facing something that needs to be approved right away.
Yeah.
Trying to do is to make sure they provide in their resolutions going forward a way in which they can deal with that, and perhaps your approach via the Finance Committee will provide the full answer.
Right, and if there are changes we need in the process and language, we will ask that those be made. Absolutely. Anyone else on either of these two procurements? Ira, go ahead.
Well, addressing this, on an RFP process, my understanding is of an RFP is if you get negotiations back and forth, whatever, you decide, well, things aren't going, we want to put it out again, that the MTA can do that in an RFP process. Is that correct? Yeah, or even, I mean, I think what we're talking about from my side is board notification of when bumps in the road get hit is really what we're asking for.
Well, we want to check on the entire process. So
well, no, that's another thing. Right, yes. And then the other thing is that what's the dynamics that's going on here? We already have many problems. We face this issue time and again where we have only two manufacturers for subway cars. I mean, I was going to ask about this. How many vendors do we actually think we're going to get for these signal contracts?
There are only two signal companies that supply the railroad business.
I'm sorry. I realize. I just hope there was maybe something I didn't know. That's what I thought. On the second one,
I think what Pat is saying is anybody who wants to go into the signal business, we would greatly appreciate it.
But there's a reason why people. Anyway, regardless, on the second one, an issue not specifically the RFP, although every time we move ahead with this with the Jamaica reconfiguration project, we slowly closed the door on something that I think is going to be looked at as a large error, and that's turning Brooklyn service into basically a shuttle service, or a scoot, as the word goes. I still want to voice my objection that a public speaker mentioned that, and I think maybe this RFP is a way to look, at least, at trying to leave that open. It does involve this Platform F. I think the transfer for people to go to Brooklyn up and over is a mistake. I would hope that we could run, even during the peak period, at least some trains through to Brooklyn. I think having that service is increasingly important as we see the development of Brooklyn increase. So I ask that this RFP, whatever is done, or that even the whole project be relooked at before the door is entirely shut on through Brooklyn service.
Okay, we will do so. Randy, I'm sorry.
I also wanted to add my voice to those who are not happy with the reconfiguration. The people who built Penn Station over 100 years ago realized having 3 connections across the platform was so great that they did it that way, to go to 3 different places. And I just can't see separating the shuttle service, making the Brooklyn service a shuttle is going to please the people out on the east end of Long Island. I don't ride it regularly, but I have great sympathy as representing commuters, whether it's in Metro North Territory or Long Island. I feel we have the same responsibility here, that they're going to get shut out on this, and when it really hits the fan, they're not going to be very happy.
Flexibility is the key. Any other comments on any of these 2 items? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Procurements are approved. David, we're not going to hear from you today, David? There are no procurements? I think it's the first time I've been here. There are no MTACC procurements.
It's been a while.
I understand that. We don't hear your voice today. Okay, we have the performance summaries in the book, operations, safety, financial, ridership, capital program. Are there any questions on any of these items? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Thank you all very much.